Welcome back, YouTube, to my Baron Respawn Timer, my weekly Power Rankings LCS video. Does that grammatically make sense? Something like that. It's my Power Rankings video out of the LCS based off of last week's results and just kind of in general the trends of this spring split. Before we get into the final week of the spring split, before playoffs, we'll find out who the last team is going to be that is locked in. We still have, I think, 2 slots up for grabs potentially in the playoffs. I think top 4 are locked, but top 6 moving on into playoffs. There's still 1 or 2 teams in the mix down there fighting for those last chances, and it's not FlyQuest and it's not CLG, so a little upset about that one on the CLG side, but either way, there's always summer. Missed it by that much. So without further ado, let's take a look into this week's Power Ranks. Taking over the top spot is TSM after beating the previous number 1 in what should have been a 3-0 weekend. TSM slide to the top of the ladder. Even with Spica being manhandled out of the jungle versus Cloud9, they were still able to come back to fight back into that one, God knows how, and come away with that victory because I guess Cloud9 also just really want that Caitlyn pick to work. Hasn't yet, don't know why they're still trying it, but either way. The only loss coming to Dignitas after a really weird Wolves Pit fight, very important objective, and then they just get ace and Dignitas win the game. What can you do? Falling back to the number 2 is Cloud9, dropping a game to both Team Liquid and TSM is going to put them in this position, but I think that all 3 of these teams, aforementioned, are about the same level. Any given day, anyone could beat the other side, but the little bit of the concern is the fact you build such a huge lead early on against TSM and can't do anything with it. Your Caitlyn pick still is not working out the way you want it to, and Perkz is starting to play some really aggressive play in the mid lane that is just by the skin of his teeth barely getting out of, and it should be punished harder by better teams, but they're not doing it yet. It's not a problem, but if it becomes a habit, it will be. Maintaining their spot in number 3 is Team Liquid. Even though they beat Cloud9, the game against Golden Guardians doesn't count because it's Golden Guardians, and the loss to CLG probably came as a surprise to this team and its fan base, giving more credit I think to CLG than it does to Team Liquid. In fact, CLG just looks that much better where they were a few weeks ago last time they played. But as mentioned, these top 3 teams are interchangeable. Any given day, one could beat the other, but that singular loss against CLG is the one that just guarantees they're not going to be the one taking over the top spot, and I don't think they're quite good enough for the number 2, so they'll stay here. Coming into number 4, after beating TSM, somehow pulling it off, Dignitas is moving up the rank. As they have in a multitude of games, they just take advantage of a small mistake the other team makes and manage to win off of that and deliver the final blow. They keep doing it. I don't know how, I don't know why, but it keeps happening. A 3-0 weekend gave them the boost necessary to move them up here into the 4th position, but they just got to find a way to win without requiring a team's mistake to be the key component to their victory. The only way this weekend could have gone worse for 100 Thieves was by losing to Golden Guardians. Swapping out Damonte for Ryoma made sense given the meta, and I still think it does make sense. I think it is a smart pick, and it finally did pay off for them in that game against GG. It's clear this team still has some wrinkles to iron out going into the playoffs, but I expect Ryoma to be staying in the starting position at least for this weekend and then into playoffs given the meta. It just suits him better. It makes sense. After a 1-2 weekend, this team is still the kings of inconsistency. They actually have every ability they need to pop off and beat really good teams, but they're also really prone to making some kind of dumb mistakes, being greedy, staying longer than they should, taking fights they don't need to, etc. They're probably the most likely to be the last spot secured here into the spring playoffs over Immortals, but I wouldn't have my expectations too high. Maybe they extend it to a full 3-game or a 5-game series, but I don't think they're going to be going too far. The biggest surprise, number 7, going to CLG. The faith is paying off. The faith sauce has marinated long enough, and this team is on the rise. They finally look like a cohesive unit, and this probably should have been a 3-0 weekend for CLG, but being able to double their win total in 3 days, it's good enough. It might have been a little too knee-jerk to put them here over Immortals and FlyQuest, but either way, this team is really starting to come together, and I think it's safe to say that CLG is now online. Last week, I had presumed FlyQuest could be better than this Immortals team, but the bot lane between Raze and Destiny are a very pleasant surprise to witness, and they have, I think, earned the accolade of the most improved bot lane in the entire LCS for Spring Split. And their schedule this weekend shows how close to those 3 or 4 teams, fighting for that playoff spot is between EG, Immortals, FlyQuest, CLG. I mean, CLG was like the longest shot, but had the chance, to be in there. And I think those 4 teams are really close, similar to the top 3 teams. But they still can't quite get there. And I don't think they're going to get it into the playoffs, but there is hope for summer. The saving grace of this team was beating the team with this newfound confidence in CLG. There's no chance they'd ever drop to the 10th spot because that's just solely locked in by GG. Hi, Max. But either way, FlyQuest is still trying to do the best that they can given the circumstances. They always have a little bit of hope for their fan base, but it's always 1 step forward and 2 steps back. Hi, buddy. I gotta do the last one. I gotta talk about Golden Guardians. Golden Guardians in number 10 is... There's nothing else to say that hasn't been said about this team already. Another 0-3 weekend, another detrimental KDA from Niles, who can't Pantheon ult until after 20 minutes, just to keep practicing and improving for the summer split. It's a developmental roster. You can't expect results in the spring. Got to look forward to the next split already and see what they can do between now and then. See you later, Max. But you would have liked to seen a little bit more from a couple of guys that were dominating in college. And with that concludes my last pre-week power rankings before we get into the actual meat and potatoes for this final thing and get into the playoffs. So I'll do one more power rankings after this week of plays concluded, but for the time being, this is where we're lying and see what happens. Moving into the next week, TSM facing off against EG, Immortals, and GG. Should be a 3-0. Looking for a team to take this 1 seed from Cloud9. They have a lot to play for here, and they really have to buckle down if they want to do so. Speaking of that 1 seed, Cloud9, CLG, Dignitas, and Immortals. I think it's going to be a 2-1 weekend where a loss could either come against CLG or Dignitas, but actually could 1-2 if both of those teams in Dig and CLG decide they want to be really good. But with the 1 seed on the line, C9 might really step up to play. Team Liquid facing off against Dignitas, EG, and 100 Thieves. There's really no way to tell because it is such a dog-eat-dog world up there in the top of the standings. Probably a 2-1 if I had to wager. And the loss could come to any one of them, and I think that's a loss they just learn from, and then they win the other 2. Dignitas against TL, C9, and FlyQuest. Probably going to be a 1-2, and they'll probably beat FlyQuest, but every once in a while, Dignitas does that thing like they did against TSM, and they win a fight, and then they just win the game for no reason. Even with the gold deficit, even down in towers, they just win anyways. It doesn't matter. 100 Thieves facing Immortals, FlyQuest, Team Liquid. Probably a 2-1. I think the loss be against Team Liquid. It could be a 3-0 if they save their best for last against Liquid, but wouldn't have high hopes because of the fact that that mid lane matchup is going to be pretty difficult here between Ryoma and Jensen. Evil Geniuses taking TSM, Team Liquid, and CLG. It's an 0-3 weekend. The faith is still alive. CLG is still going to make playoffs. So the way Niles put it, just because they're eliminated by math or something, who cares? We're moving on. Fuck that shit. It's still going to be hard to beat them. The EG could 2-1. They could end up beating CLG. But either way, this is going to be a pretty tough weekend here for EG, and I think it's going to have a lot to say about the way that they play going through and into playoffs. It's a good opportunity for them to build momentum for sure. CLG with C9, GG, and EG, they could 2-1. Would love to see a 3-0. I'd love to see them beat Cloud9. That'd be awesome. But I don't think it's in the cards. I don't think it's very feasible for it to happen. Said the same thing against Team Liquid, though. But there's a very real chance they do beat both EG and GG and then have a fighting spot for C9. Immortals with 100 Thieves, TSM, and C9. Their best chance is against 100T. But they got to make sure that their bot is actually ahead. Likely a 1-2 weekend for them. FlyQuest against GG, 100T, and Dignitas. Could be a 1-2. Could also be a 2-1. I think the team that they for sure beat is going to be, obviously, Golden Guardians. And I think if you do favor them into a 2-1, the team they are more likely to beat is actually Dignitas over 100 Thieves. Similar to how CLG did. And last but not least, Golden Guardians with the FlyQuest, CLG, and TSM. I really have to. It's probably an 0-3. They might beat FlyQuest. They might do something crazy and beat FlyQuest. I don't know. There's just too much work to be done around this team to be able to reliably predict them to win a game, which is sad to say. Either way, thank you so much for watching my Week 5 Baron Respawn timer going into Week 6. The LCL, LCL, I don't know what league I'm in. The LCS ranks have concluded. We'll find out exactly what the pecking order is after this final week of play, and then things will get real interesting going into playoffs, and boys will become men, and that's about it. There's really nothing else to it. Thanks for watching. I'm recording this on Wednesday, so I should be uploading this Thursday morning, which means the day you're watching this, if you are watching this on that day of upload, I'm also going to be doing my League and Stuff Working Title podcast that I do with my amigos, and that'll be tonight on my Twitch channel. All of my links are down below, my Twitter, my Twitch, my Instagram as well, all of that down there. You can follow me along the way. I'm most active on Twitter, Twitch every once in a while, probably not nearly as often as I should be, but thanks for watching. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, continue to get these little goodies of information that every once in a while I offer. It's not very often, but every once in a while. And I'll see you next time.